Vakratunda Mahakaya Suryakoti Samapraha Nirvignam Kurumedeva Sarvakarishu Sarvada. Good afternoon, and invoking the blessings of the Lord of prosperity and wisdom, it gives me great pleasure to have our first CME of Delhi Gynecologist Forum, Dwarka. And I welcome you all. I would now request our Honorable President, Dr. Deepika Deka, to welcome our chief guest, Dr. Sharda Jain.
Namaste and good evening to everybody. It really is a very important day for the Dwarka Delhi Gynecologist Forum because we are starting our first CME. For this, I really must thank Dr. Sharda Jain for giving us this opportunity. And everybody knows her, of course, but she is the Secretary General of the Delhi Gynecologist Forum. And we know her as a teacher from the days when she was in Lady Harding. And the way she's brought up this forum is too good. The function on the 16th really opened my eyes at what she has been able to do and what she has done. So I would request, Madam, thank you very much for giving us this opportunity to start this Dwarka Society. And we would need your blessings to go ahead with the good work that you have in your vision implanted into our brains. Thank you, Madam.
I think it's absolutely a great day, and big congratulations to Dr. Deepika Deka and Dr. Leena Sridhar and her team that the 9th Forum of Delhi Gynecologist Forum has started. And I think the reins of this particular forum are with the great academicians, and I'm sure it is going to do extremely well, much better than we had expected. And I'm sure the topic which you have chosen at the start is thalassemia. We all know is preventable, but I think we need to give a real clear roadmap for its control. And not that we have not been working on this particular area when Dr. Arora is here. That for the last 3-4 decades people have been working on it. But I think unlike RH incompatibility, long way to go. Long way to go, because 3 to 4% is the carrier rate for all these hemoglobinopathies. It means the number is enormous, 45 million, and if we add on 3 to 4 lakhs hemoglobinopathies every year. And people say that the most of the people were detected belong to poor class and the middle class. I know my husband's chief grandchild with thalassemia major. Pathologist, the grandchild was thalassemia major. So if that particular level, okay, this was 30 years back, but if that can be missed at that particular stage, I think lots and lots of work is done. I find, when it comes to blood grouping, everybody during pregnancy gets a blood group and RH done. Everybody gets done, HIV testing done. But as far as thalassemia is concerned, I think, lots and lots of work has to be done, because gynecologists also are not getting this investigations done. So I think we have to really go a long way. Think about the rural area where the 70% of the population of this country is living. So we need to work out a real roadmap. And till now we can only create awareness. As for the treatment part is concerned, stem cell bone marrow replacement and all, I think they're expensive and unthinkable at this particular stage. So we will hear more about from you and the experts. So with these remarks, thank you very much, Dr. Deepika Deka, and great future as far as this forum is concerned.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for giving your blessings to this forum. I would like to now move on for our next academic session. And I would like to introduce the chairmen for our academic session. Now, I would like to welcome Dr. Asmita, first chairperson for the session. She is Director, Professor and Head, Obs and Gynae at Maulana Azad Medical College, a great teacher. She is Program Coordinator of AFNB, and she is the present President of NACHI 2020 to 22. So I welcome you, ma'am. Next chairperson is Dr. Jyoti. She is a principal consultant obstetrician and gynecologist at Apollo Cradle Hospital, Indirapuram. She is president of Delhi Gynecologist Forum East and co-chairperson AOGT subcommittee. And last but not the least, our third chairperson is Dr. Leena N. Sridhar. We all know her as a very passionate gynecologist. She is senior consultant Obs and Gynae at Manipal Hospital, Dwarka, and heads the Department of Academics and Research of the hospital. She is an alumni of Maulana Azad Medical College. I welcome you all, ma'am. I would like to invite now Dr. Asmita. Ma'am, can you please introduce our speaker for the first session?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Yogita, for those words of introduction. Obstetricians' perception of thalassemia problem is much and gross underestimate of a reality, because at birth the neonate is normal, but the key to prevention of this particular disease in our hands, and I think none other than Dr. Arora is going to sensitize us on an issue. He has a very large experience of working for thalassemic children and is the Secretary General of Thalassemia Welfare Society. So without wasting much time, I invite Dr. Arora to update us on the burden of thalassemia in Delhi. Dr. Arora, please.
Thank you, madam. I'll first of all like to thank. See, I'm not able to share this PPT. Please allow me.
I'm not able to share. Huh? हमारी stop कर दो. Stop
Post.
share. Yes.
I'm not able to share.
You
Okay, yes.
Now you will be able to. Now you
Got
will
it,
be
got
able to.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you. So first of all, like to thank Dr. Deepika Deka, your DGF Forum, and all the organization of Obs and Gynae, the organizers, for giving me a chance to speak on the topic of from the core of the heart, that is thalassemia. I will be very direct to speak. First of all, forgive me if I have some things which are not favorable to gynecologists, because I have to speak on those terms. So I'll just a minute. I'll share you a few stories. This is 1995. There's a family having a thalassemia major male child. After some time, the boy's maternal aunt, that Masi, got pregnant, and she informed her gynec that she had a nephew who is a thalassemia major. The gynec said, "You are quite healthy. There is no need for thalassemia test." The lady's real sister, that is the mother of the thalassemia major, she intervened and forced the gynec to get the test done, telling her, "We don't want another thalassemia major in our family." The gynec takes the sample and asks the lady to come after 1 week. After 1 week, the gynec told that the reports are normal. The lady delivers a male child diagnosed thalassemia major at 3 months of age. And the new thalassemia major not welcomed the family and was not transfused. The child succumbed to the disease within 1 year. So I like to give you a message. The strong family history of thalassemia is, and not screening a thalassemia is a crime. Again, in 10 years later, in 2005, a 28-year-old gentleman approaches me to inquire about thalassemia. He was diagnosed as thalassemia carrier in a screening camp organized by our society few days back in the MNC he was working. His wife was already 4 months pregnant. She also turned out to be thalassemia trait. Referred to AIMS for prenatal diagnosis. Fetus turned out to be thalassemia major. By the time the termination could be planned, the lady had crossed 20 weeks of gestation. Somehow, she got the termination done at this stage, taking risk to her life. The irony of the story is that the husband has seen our advertisement in the newspaper on International Thalassemia Day just few days back and asked her gynec to test for thalassemia status. But the gynec had refused her on the ground that there is no history of thalassemia in their family. So, family history of thalassemia is not a prerequisite to screen for thalassemia. Again, 10 years later, 2015, A young lady becomes pregnant in October 2012. She visited Gynec 1, G1, immediately after missing period. G1, Gynec 1 advises hemoglobin, urine, HIV, and ultrasound, etc. She did not have facility for delivery. So the patient shifted to other gynec during first trimester only, which had who had nursing home attached. G2 advises some more routine investigations. At 8 months of pregnancy, because of low hemoglobin, the lady was advised HPLC. The lady turned out to be a thalassemia trait. Since it was an advanced stage of pregnancy, no steps could be taken. The lady delivers a beautiful girl in June 13. And June 14, the girl turned out to be thalassemia major. So don't miss to screen for thalassemia during first trimester. Whenever a lady visits you, please screen the lady during first trimester. Okay, just one slide on what is thalassemia. It's an adult hemoglobin is formed by the 2 alpha and beta globin genes. In thalassemia, the synthesis of either alpha or beta gene is reduced. In beta thalassemia, there is defective synthesis of beta gene, and the manifestations are due to excessive alpha genes. While in alpha thalassemia, alpha chains are reduced and excess of beta chains cause reduced survival. Alpha thalassemia is of two types, alpha plus and alpha zero. Alpha plus is mild and its inheritance is of not much importance. Alpha zero is severe. In India, alpha plus is more common. Since in our country, beta thalassemia is very common, hence when we term thalassemia, it denotes only beta thalassemia. So there is a big thalassemia syndrome, alpha thalassemia, beta thalassemia, sickle cell, HBE, HBC, D, and HBQ, etc. What happens in thalassemia? When the child is born, at the time when you deliver a child is normal, hale, and hearty at birth. By 3 months to 2 years, child starts showing symptoms of severe anemia, and treatment includes repeated blood transfusions, investigations, hospital visits every 2 to 4 weeks, and costly medicine throughout life. The cost of therapy is 50,000 to 2 lakh per year. And fear of transfusion, transmitted infection, hepatitis B, C, HIV. There's a loss of time, energy, money, endocrine complications, liver, heart failure, always fear of early death. And you know the permanent cure is the stem cell transplantation, which is not achievable in all due to non-availability of match donor, high cost, and high risk involved. So prevention is the ultimate cure. Thalassemia is not a disease of few people. 50,000 million people are thalassemia carriers. 5 crore Indians are thalassemia carriers. And one of the most celebrate is Amitabh Bachchan is also thalassemia carrier. If a person like him, who is at age of around 80, so active and much more than all of us, if he can be a thalassemia carrier, anybody can be a thalassemia carrier. So how common it is? Beta thalassemia is 1 to 17% in different communities, average is 4%. Around 10,000 to 12,000 thalassemia major are born every year in our country. Sickle cell is more common in tribes and as high as 40% in some areas. HBE is highly prevalent in West Bengal and Northeast states. Alpha thalassemia is not significant. In Delhi, 1 out of 18 is a thalassemia carrier. And around 200 thalassemia major are born every year in Delhi. And 1 thalassemia major child is born every 45 minutes. Means by the time you finish this session, we'll have another thalassemia child. Why there's a need for prevention? Because there's a lifelong repeated blood transfusion, lifelong frequent hospital visits, lifelong costly treatment, and the limitations of permanent cure. Around 1,875 crores are required to treat approximately 1.5 lakh thalassemics, and over 40% voluntary blood is used by thalassemics. Ignorance is highly prevalent in both public and medical professions. By prevention, you reduce the burden of patients, families, as well as the government. So once a thalassemia major is diagnosed, family starts cursing obstetricians. I'm sorry to say, but this really happens for not advising thalassemia tests. And here I will like to quote what Dr. Sharda Jain said just recently. We are advising blood group and HIV to everyone. Say HIV is just 0.25% in India, while thalassemia is 4%. We fail to understand that HIV, which is 1 in 400, is advised to every pregnant woman, and which is 4 in every 100 is not advised. This you all know, this is autosomal recessive inheritance. When both husband and wife thalassemia carriers, then in each pregnancy, 25% chance of having a thalassemia major child, 25% absolute normal, non-invalid thalassemia carrier, and 50% thalassemia carrier like parents. And if one of them is not a carrier, then child will never be a thalassemia major, 50% carrier and 50% normal. So in each pregnancy, there is 25% risk to offspring if both parents are thalassemia carriers. I like to show some international success stories. Cyprus, Sardinia, Greece, Italy, Thailand, many countries have controlled thalassemia. If you see Cyprus started thalassemia control program in 1974. Within 10 years, it brought to almost just 1%. They control up to 99% in 10 years. While in Italy and Greece, they control up to 90% in 10 years. And the reason behind was the most successful control programs are based on carrier detection, counseling, and fetal diagnosis. So how to screen thalassemia? So very easy. Any physician can diagnose thalassemia screening. See, whenever you ask for a hemoglobin test to any lady, be it a young girl, adolescent girl, any anemic lady, or just for any routine infection, you always ask for CBC. If you look into MCH, MCV, RBC count, and hemoglobin, if you look into all these 3-4 parameters, you can easily suspect that the person is thalassemia carrier. MCV less than 80, MCH less than 27, and especially if RBC count is higher in comparison to hemoglobin. See, when hemoglobin is low in iron deficiency, RBC will also be low. But in thalassemia carrier, RBC count will be high. RDW will be normally normal in thalassemia carrier unless until it has concomitant iron deficiency anemia. So permanent, the final test is HbA2, direct HbA2, Hb electrophoresis, or HbHPLC. If it is more than 3.5%, the person is thalassemia carrier. So thalassemia test needs to be done just once in lifetime. So why not get it done even at the age of 5 years, 6 years, 10 years? When be it a boy or girl, whosoever, maybe in your case, maybe it also girls, when she comes for any other reasons, you can ask for HbA2 test at that time. See, here I like to put one more thing. See, you are doing blood group test. Okay, blood group is required by the gynecologist for if it is turns out to be Rh negative. In otherwise, blood group is done usually when the child goes to school at 3 years of age. I fail to understand it is required either at the pregnancy when it is negative or a blood transfusion. See, 1 in 1,000 doesn't require blood transfusion. And if at all anybody requires transfusion, it is not done just like a filmy style, taking blood from one person, giving to other. Whole battery of tests are done, which takes at least 2 to 3 hours. So all these tests are done. Why not blood group can test? A test which is not required by 99% people is done at 3 years of age only because the teacher has told. That to a KG teacher, not even a higher secondary or primary teacher. And a test which is required by everyone in the life, everybody is going to marry and have children. And that is not done even at the time of the pregnancy. So if you go if it is less than 3.1% HbA2, it is normal or maybe alpha thalassemia trait. If it is 3.1 to 3.9%, it may be beta thalassemia trait with iron deficiency anemia or interaction of alpha and beta thalassemia. So if you find HbA2 between 3.1 to 3.9, if at all you are not suspecting beta thalassemia, go for mutation. Because 3.2, 3.3 may be silent beta thalassemia. So you should advise for mutation analysis if it is less than 3.5. Don't say it is not a carrier. 3.9 to 9% beta thalassemia trait, and if it is more than 9%, it is HBE. So what are the fallacies while diagnosis thalassemia carrier state? Concomitant iron deficiency lowers HbA2. If you see it is very severe anemia, severe iron deficiency, then you can give 1 month iron therapy or 2 month iron therapy, adequate iron therapy, and HbA2 level will rise. But don't pay this thing in pregnancy. In pregnancy, if you doubt, go for mutation analysis. Silent BTT may not have elevated HbA2. Same case I am telling you. Coexistent alpha thalassemia may have normal level of HbA2. Delta beta thalassemia may have normal or low level of HbA2. So if you're slightest of the doubt, then go for mutation analysis by gene sequence. This is the most important slide. I request all of you to please concentrate. But we have been facing day and night that when a lady goes to, you have seen 3 cases, and even today, if a lady has a hemoglobin of 11.5 gram, mostly people say, no, you cannot be a thalassemia carrier. If you have a 11 gram hemoglobin, you cannot be thalassemia carrier, which is totally wrong. Go for MCV, MCH value. If MCV is less than 80, MCH less than 80, even a male with 11.5 to 15.3 may be thalassemia carrier. Even female having 14 gram hemoglobin may be thalassemia. Never say if you have a hemoglobin 13 gram, you cannot be carrier. Please take out from this mind. I'll give you 2 examples as well. Here, this is one case where this hemoglobin is 11.5 grams. MCV is 88, MCH 28, and HbA2 is 2.3%. That means the person is not a thalassemia carrier. And the other case you see, hemoglobin is 14.2 gram, MCV is 61, MCH 20, and A2 is 5.3, and the person is thalassemia carrier. You see, 14.2 is a carrier, 11.5 is not a carrier. So never go by hemoglobin value. At least look for MCV and MCH. Now we are getting in all CBC investigation these to be done. So carrier state has no disadvantage. No, you are not. It is not frightening to get tested thalassemia carrier. It should not be considered as a stigma. The risk arises only when both partners are thalassemia carriers. Homozygous state is very severe and eventually fatal with limited curative possibility. So fetal diagnosis is always available and safe. Fetal diagnosis, sorry. So who holds the master key? I think Dr. Sharda said, sorry, Dr. Smita. She said that yes, we people, I would say gynecologists, obstetricians, they are the key persons who hold the key. So obstetricians, please advise thalassemia carrier when the time when lady is most receptive to honor your advice. This is them. See, this is the only branch of medicine where the family is ready to spend anything. They are not going to ask you any question. Many times we have seen that obstetricians saying that if we ask for this test, they will say you're increasing our cost. I have never seen a family that they're poor or rich. If you ask 10 tests, they are going to do it. If you ask 20 tests, they will not refuse it. You ask for 10 ultrasounds, they are not going to refuse it. Then why they will refuse the HPLC? Never. So please do ask for HPLC to each and every pregnant woman when they visit you. So what is how to screen? Screen the pregnant woman on first visit. If screening is positive, confirmed by HbA2 estimation or HB electrophoresis HPLC of the husband. If husband is not a trait, no further action requires. If husband is trait, there is a need for prenatal diagnosis. If fetus is major, the family has the option to abort it, which is legal. And if it is normal or thalassemia trait, continue the pregnancy. So what are the indication of partner screening of pre-diagnosis? See, if in your case, I'm saying, if the lady is a beta thalassemia trait, delta beta trait, sickle trait, E trait, D-trait, D-thal or Q-thal, the partner should be screened. And prenatal diagnosis is required if both are beta thalassemia trait. One is trait, other is HBE, hetero or homo. One is trait, other is sickle. Both are sickle and HBD trait or homozygous. Delta beta trait, beta thal major, or beta delta and beta thal major. So all these conditions require prenatal diagnosis. And the conditions where it is not prenatal diagnosis not required, if both partners are HBD trait or homozygous, both are HBE trait or homozygous, or one partner is HBQ India and other beta thalassemia trait. But I like to reiterate that HBQ India with sickle required diagnosis. Q with beta thal doesn't require, but Q with sickle requires. So you all know that how to go for prenatal diagnosis. CVS, amniocentesis, chondrocentesis, and
We shall be
pre-gestation.
discussing.
Yes, that thing. So, what is the general cost factor involved? In Delhi, it's Lok Nayak Hospital, it is zero, no cost. Anybody can come and have it. Everything is free. In AIIMS, SGPJ, Lucknow, PJ, Chandigarh, around 2,000 to 4,000. In private, it varies at different centers, 20,000 to 40,000. And PGD, you know much better. I'm not aware of it. Maybe 3 lakh to 4 lakh or so. So these are few thalassemic children. What I want to request is please take appropriate action and with all your fellow colleagues so that we don't have this much number of thalassemia patients. Because thalassemia tests need to be done just once in lifetime. That is the single message I like to give you. So there is old saying that the inferior doctors treat full-blown cases and mediocre doctor treat to prevent complications, and superior doctors like all of you treat to prevent the disease. Thank you. And it is it is a teamwork. See, everybody, all physicians, all medicals, paramedicals, society, NGOs, government, everybody has to work. But the most important role has to be played by the obstetricians and gynecologists, you people. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Arora. It was really a brilliant presentation. I think all of us are much wiser now, especially diagnosis and suspecting thalassemia even in a women who are not anemic. Because by and large in India, most of the obstetricians accept that hemoglobin of 10 or 11 gram% is quite okay for a pregnant woman. So normally we do not act. And screening for thalassemia can be done by a simple test like a CBC. If we order, it comes in nowadays with an automated analyzer. Every report has an CBC. We just need to take efforts to read those values. That's all. And in a government setup like ours, like a Maulana Azad, we have a Nestor which is used quite frequent as a routine for screening all pregnant women. So our obstetrician only have to take care that we just write that the woman has to undergo and check if she has undergone or not. All Delhi government hospitals do Nestor as a free of cost test for all women. So thank you so much for updating us on this topic.
I'll have to one more comment, please. See, another problem what we have been facing. See, in thalassemia major, we don't give iron. So some people, maybe even let it be obstetricians, especially for you people, I'm saying is, many obstetricians, what they do, they stop iron therapy to pregnant women, which is not true. A pregnant thalassemia carrier should be given as much iron as you give to any other lady. Iron therapy is not contraindicated to thalassemia carrier person. So you can give iron to every pregnant woman as much as you give to other ladies.
Thank you so much for that addition. Another point I would like to add for all obstetrician colleagues, please do the tests at the first visit, because even if we do HPLC and diagnose thalassemia trait, we need to diagnose the mutations if we have to offer them the prenatal testing. So that timelines have to be kept in mind, because in our country with the MTP Act, every fetal medicine expert is running after the timelines. So it should be done at the first visit. Don't wait till the hemoglobin report comes. If it is low, then I will advise HPLC or a thalassemia testing. I don't see any questions in the chat box. Dr. Sharda, madam, your expert comments, please.
Please unmute yourself, madam.
Ma'am, please.
Ma'am, you are muted. We can't hear you. Sharda, ma'am, you are muted. Yeah.
No.
Both husband and wife, it should be done. If they have not been screened earlier, both husband and wife should be done. The wife may not be thalassaemic trait, but if the husband is, at least 50% children will be thalassaemic, will be having a thalassemia trait. So I get it done as a policy at our center. Both husband and wife at the first antenatal visit, we get it done. And as Dr. Arora has said, simple test, CBC. If you're clear about these two things, MCV and MCH, so simple. But that was news to me, people like me used to think, if your hemoglobin is more than 12 gram%, you will not be thalassemia minor. But it is an eye opener for me.
Just yesterday, I saw a case referred by Dr. Arora, thalassemia major. Her hemoglobin was 11.
Yeah.
No, madam, something we have to really act. If the other countries, small countries can do it, we can also do it.
Absolutely.
Madam, it
Can
is
we
just
go on to the next topic?
As you're doing OGT on the first visit, I think make it mandatory from your folksy and whatever organization you have. So like OGT, it should be made on first visit mandatory.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Dr. Arora, for that presentation. And if there are no questions, is there something in the chat box?
We can go on to the panel, and we have time at the end of the session.
Yeah. So we close this session and over to the Dr. Leena for the subsequent sessions.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Can we stop sharing the slide? We go on to the next.
Ma'am, we have moved to next.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. And thank you, sir, for such an eye-opening session. I think sir has made it very clear to all of us how important it is to study thalassemia. So now we would like to start the next session, which includes the panel discussion. I would like to call upon Dr. Jyoti to please introduce Dr. Deepika as the moderator.
Thank you so much. And I think it's my proud privilege to be able to introduce Deepika Dekar, who's not just the moderator, but she's the president of the DGF Dwarka. I was just thinking, how am I going to introduce her? And I realized that there are no words.
Just one line, President DGF, enough. Yeah. Let's go on to the panel.
No, but we need to tell, madam, to everyone that one thing is very important. Pioneer as far as fetal medicine is concerned and all the interventional procedures. And you are just the right person to be able to really get on to the obstetrician exactly how we need to move ahead to be able to prevent thalassemia. So ma'am, over to you.
Ma'am, I would like to welcome Dr. Leena ma'am to introduce our panelists for this issue.
So we've got a good panel, and ma'am, Dr. Deepika is the moderator. I welcome Dr. Amita Gupta, who is a senior consultant obstetrician and gynecologist at the Maharaja Agrasen Hospital, Dwarka, New Delhi. Next. Then we have Dr. Bhavna Anand. She is working as a consultant in the Department of Fetal Medicine at the Manipal Hospital, New Delhi. We have Dr. Monica Bhatia, who is currently working as a senior consultant and head in the Department of Obs-Gynae at the Venkateshwar Hospital in Delhi. We have Dr. Shilpa Ghosh, who is the Director of Obstetrics and Gynecology at the Akash Health Care, Dwarka. We have Dr. Yogita Parashar, who is a consultant obstetrician and gynecologist at the Manipal Hospital, Dwarka, New Delhi. So coming back to our panel discussion and over to Dr. Deepika Dekar for conducting the, very much look forward to the panel discussion.
Okay, thank you. Can I share the screen, please? I mean, it's coming as stop screen. Okay. So I welcome all the panelists. And Dr. Arora's talk really got me thinking. You know, when I was very young and I started delivering lectures on thalassemia, I used to say that probably Dracula was a thalassemic. Dracula needed blood just to keep alive. So I'm not saying that, you know, that children, such cute children they are. And I have been interacting with these kids and they always used to ask me, Auntie, I do exercise, like, but so much exercise, but why am I not like Salman Khan? You know, when you interact with these children, you feel so bad that, you know, I've devoted my last 30 years of my life also with the thalassemics and with the other genetic disorders, children with genetic diseases. It really touches your heart. So let us hope that we can do our best. In fact, when I was, chairman of the genetic committee, I used to, of FOXY, I used to go around the country. I once went to one place, I don't want to name, and I was delivering this lecture on thalassemia. So the professor and head of the department came up and said, we don't have problems with thalassemia. So then I was surprised. I said, no, I think this is the thalassemia belt. So at dinner time, we met the professor and head of the Department of Pediatrics. And I said, I believe you don't have thalassemia in her presence, you know, so that it comes out. And he said, what are you saying, madam? We have the thalassemia ward on the second floor, just below the gynae ward. So what happens is that, ladies and gentlemen, I hope there are some gentlemen as well. So we see the newborn babies. We see the newborn babies, they are pink and crying. And if they don't have chinky eyes like Down syndrome, we think that they are totally normal. But we don't know that after 3 months, after 6 months, they then develop anemia, they then develop all these problems, and they land up with the neonatologists, the pediatricians. So obstetricians think that they have delivered a healthy baby, whereas these problems come up later on, and who is to blame? It is the obstetrician. So when I was meeting all these children, they used to say, why didn't my mother's obstetrician know that I was a thalassemic baby? The day is not far when, you know, obstetricians will be sued for not having detected thalassemia. So let us recapitulate and let us go on with our panel discussion. I welcome all the panelists. I hope they are all there. Amita, Bhavna, Monica, Shilpa, Yogita. I cannot see Amita and Shilpa and Monica. Hello. Hello, please unmute yourselves. Okay. So we know that inheritance is in 3 forms: autosomal dominant, autosomal recessive, and X-linked. Today, we are going to talk about autosomal recessive conditions. Obstetricians need not be geneticists. This is not a fetal medicine conference. This is an obstetrician and gynecologist CME. But obstetricians need to know what is Down syndrome. They need to know autosomal conditions. What is thalassemia? Because this, by then only we will be able to prevent. Because most of the autosomal recessive disorders, they can be very severe and may even be fatal. We talked about the various treatments available, but none of them are 100%. Even blood transplant, organ transplant is not 100% effective sometimes, and it's very, very expensive. Not everybody can afford it. So we therefore need to know at least the basics and when to refer. So I would like to talk to Dr. Amita Gupta. What are the common autosomal recessive disorders that we have to worry about, that obstetricians should know? Dr. Amita, please. Dr. Amita, please answer. Unmute yourself and answer.
Dr. Amita?
She's there, but I think she needs to be.
She's there.
She needs to be unmuted by the
Unmute yourself, Dr. Amita. Please hurry up.
host. Please, will need to unmute.
No unmute option.
Would anybody else like to answer? Any of the other panelists like to answer? Monica?
Yes,
Is Dr. Seema also there?
Dr. Bhavna, you answer. Dr. Bhavna.
like to answer.
Yeah, so Dr. Bhavna would answer this. Yeah.
Hello, everybody.
You know, just name a few diseases. We already talked about
Yeah.
thalassemia. What are some other diseases so that it strikes a chord?
It is, besides thalassemia, it is sickle cell disease, congenital adrenal hyperplasia,
Yeah.
which are the common autosomal recessive disorder. It's Duchenne muscular dystrophy. And
Yeah. Certainly. My slide is not moving. Is anybody from the IT there? My slide is not going down.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's more now. It's fine.
Yeah. So, Dr. Monica, could you please answer? So we have all this, you know, list of conditions: metabolic disorders, cystic fibrosis, phenylketonuria, galactosemia. Then we have skeletal disorders, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, hemopoietic disorders, which are more common, sickle cell disease, thalassemia, endocrine disorders like congenital adrenal hyperplasia. At AIMS, we used to see a lot of spinal muscular atrophies. So these were some of the conditions that we used to see. Okay, Dr. Bhavna, how does an autosomal disorder get transmitted to the fetus? Dr. Bhavna is there?
yeah, ma'am. Can you listen me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. An autosomal disorder is a type of single gene disorder which are transmitted in Mendelian inheritance pattern. That means it may be an autosomal dominant or an autosomal recessive. In autosomal dominant pattern, one of the parent is usually carry the disease, and it is transmitted vertically to the offspring. And there's 50% chance that whether the offspring will carry the disease, and 50% chance that it will not carry the disease. While in autosomal recessive pattern, both the parents should be carrier of the disease, and there is 25% chance that the offspring will carry the disease, 50% chance that they are carrier of the disease, and 25% chance that they do not transmit either of the gene to the offspring, and they do not carry the disease.
So, you know, anything more than 1 to 2% is considered high risk.
Yeah.
So 25% is really, really very high.
25%,
People do get confused, you know, between what is autosomal recessive and what is a trait, you know, disease and trait. Could you please elaborate?
Yeah, ma'am. Trait means that in a cell there are 2 copies of each gene on each chromosomes. There are 23 sets of chromosomes. So if the parents are carrying mutated gene on single chromosome and the other chromosome is normal, then it will be called as a trait. And if both the copies are mutated, then that person will be called as carrying the disease. So that will be a homozygous, and the carrier patient will be a heterozygous.
Yeah. So in fact, yesterday only I had a patient who was confused between trait and carrier. So they actually mean the same. And just to break the monotony, you know, consanguineous marriages, why we don't like them? Because very often marrying your cousin is really not a good idea. Though in many parts of the country, it's really quite prevalent, especially in South India. Because in such conditions as autosomal recessive diseases, you know, they become more common. Okay. Now, I hope Shilpa is here with us. She had a, yeah. So what if only one parent has the disease, you know, is a thalassemia major? Then what is the risk to the child? Husband normal. Anyone could answer? Yesterday, I had a case of thalassemia major, the one that he sent. And her obstetrician in Lucknow said, you have 100% chance of having a baby with thalassemia major. And, you know, she did not conceive. So it's so much later that she came for a second opinion. So, Monica, Dr. Seema, you are also there. I think she's not there, Shilpa. So what?
Dr. Shilpa is there.
Okay.
Yeah. She's
okay, welcome, Dr. Shilpa. Good that you've joined us.
Uh-huh. So we'll just give us a minute. We'll try to, because she just joined in.
Because people think that a person with thalassemia major or a person with sickle cell disease, 100% there's going to be the same disease. So they cannot differentiate in between disease and trait.
This is her name, no? Dr. Has she joined? Why is she not able to unmute herself?
Shilpa is asking the host to unmute. Unmute. Host to unmute.
Find the participant. Find the participant.
I hope she hasn't joined.
She hasn't. I think she hasn't logged in. She hasn't joined in the panelists.
Okay, so I leave it to any of the panelists to answer.
One parent has the disease. If it's an autosomal,
Monica?
yes.
Yes, Monica.
So as Dr. Bhavna just said, we need both the copies to be mutated. So the parent, both the parents should be, if one parent is has the disease, that means the parent has both the genes abnormal. The other one, if the other one is totally normal, then the children can only be carriers. They cannot have the disease. However, if the other parent is a carrier, then there is.
We just said it's only one parent, the other is normal.
So the other,
so there's no problem.
Then, then the children can only be carriers. They cannot have the disease because the other parent is going to have the normal genes.
So yes, so you need both parents. If only one parent, then that child will 100% be a carrier but not have the disease. Okay. So Yogita, you know, people do not understand when exactly to refer to a fetal medicine specialist. So if there is a family comes to you, the previous child thalassemia, previous child muscular dystrophy, when would you refer?
Whenever there is a history of consanguineous marriage, or there is a history of any of the parents suffering with this hereditary disorder, if there is any history of previous child suffering from this disorder, if there is any history of recurrent abortions, or a child with genetic anomalies, then we will refer to the fetal medicine specialist.
Yeah, and we just talked about screening. So if you find that the screen has come positive, thalassemia, you know, both people are positive, then of course you have to refer. The earlier, the better. So routine screening, family history, and then you need to refer for prenatal conception counseling, prenatal diagnosis by the appropriate method at the appropriate time. Because I remember, again, a very senior professor was calling me up from far away. I'm sending you a patient and she was like 26 weeks pregnant. Do the CVS tomorrow for thalassemia. I said, can it be done? Anybody? No, you need so much. We will be talking about it. Okay. So now that we have an introduction of what are autosomal disorders, let us go to cases one by one. So, Dr. Amita, are you logged in or not? This is a 25-year-old gravida too, comes with pregnancy at 8 weeks, and the previous child has thalassemia major. Now, very sad story. I don't know why we can't prevent the first child from having thalassemia. Anyway, this is a second pregnancy. Let us at least prevent. What do you do, Dr. Amita? Please unmute Dr. Amita.
Everybody is unmuted actually.
Hello, Dr. Amita, are you there?
Dr. Amita?
Okay, let's not waste time. Anybody else would like to answer?
Yeah.
Anybody would like to answer?
Yeah, you answer.
Video. Yes, hello.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes,
we have got
ma'am.
her.
Who's
Ma'am,
answering?
Yeah, good. We have got
Yeah.
her.
Okay,
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
please go ahead.
Ma'am, when a 25-year-old second gravida, para-1 woman comes with pregnancy of 8 weeks, and the previous child already has a thalassemia major, then we need to do the mutation studies of the couple, because both are hiring the trait as in case of previous child having thalassemia major. So we are expecting that both the parents are harboring the minor trait. So in present pregnancy, we have to see the fetus is not thalassemia major, and we have to refer the couple to fetal medicine expert and genetist, so that we can screen for the present pregnancy also and prevent a thalassemia major baby to come.
Yeah. So who will do the mutation? So the first thing is that, you really have to refer immediately to the fetal medicine specialist. And what will you counsel the parents? They want to know.
Yes. Then if both the parents, they are harboring
they had a previous child with thalassemia.
Yeah. Then we have 25% risk of the fetus to be affected, the present pregnancy to be affected by thalassemia major.
Yeah.
And 50% case, it can be a carrier. And the last 25%, the fetus may not be affected. So
right.
We really need to know about the fetus, and immediately we have to send for the fetal medicine expert to screen the fetus.
To diagnose, actually. Now it is no screening, it is diagnosis.
Diagnosing,
so thank
yes.
you very much. Thank you. So genetic counseling really is very, very important. The obstetrician has to refer immediately for genetic counseling. You should not wait. And then it's the counselor who will actually explain what this condition is, what are the risks, how it can be diagnosed, so on and so forth. At this point, I also would like to say that we used to get a lot of patients who actually wanted cord blood to be kept. So HLA typing also we used to do along with the diagnosis for the thalassemia. And of course, for the obstetrician, she is going to have the CVS and come back to you for the management of the pregnancy. So you have to manage the anemia, the maternal anemia due to the thalassemia minor. Okay. Yeah. Now, this is another second case, which is to this is a 30-year-old primate, comes with anemia, hemoglobin of 8 gram%, no family history of thalassemia major. What investigations to do? So, well, we have diagnosed and we find that she's a minor. So what to do next?
So we have encountered a patient with anemia. So we have to investigate her for anemia, starting from a complete blood count, including hemoglobin, TLC, DLC, platelet counts, reticulocyte count, and red blood cells indices like MCV, MCH, MCHC. And then besides clinical examination, and then HPLC testing is a must to know the various components of hemoglobin, HbA2 and HbF. And if we find that she is a carrier of a thalassemia, that means her HbA2 levels are increased, then she is to be managed as that.
No, so what will you do next?
So the first and foremost thing is to do the husband HPLC levels.
Yeah. So you need to do the husband's.
Both the partners are carrying the thalassemia trait.
So a husband has to be done. And in this case, the husband is not a carrier. So is she safe?
She's safe for the fetus, but not. And also, if she's a thalassemia trait only, then the pregnancy complications are not much higher than a normal pregnancy. But we have to treat her anemia because she is hemoglobin 8. These the trait patients are usually normocytic. They are usually mildly anemic. They have microcytic hypochromic anemia. And we have to treat her anemia by not giving prophylactic iron therapy, but we have to see for the iron indices. If the iron deficiency is there, then only the treatment of iron deficiency should
Can
be.
we give parenteral iron, or should we give, you know, if the
Parenteral iron
hemoglobin
is
was
not
very
required.
low, should we give blood or should we give parenteral iron?
We should give blood to the patient. Parenteral iron is not required because these
Yeah.
patients are already iron overload.
Yes.
If the sign of iron deficiency is present, then only iron therapy is required.
Yeah. So therefore folic acid and iron can be given, oral iron can be given, but we don't like to give parenteral iron. And if the hemoglobin becomes very low, because they can have anemia of pregnancy on top of the anemia of thalassemia minor. So we need to give blood transfusions more frequently, especially if they are near term or in labor.
Yes.
Okay. So now this is another question to Dr. Monica. So
Monica.
this is a 35-year-old woman with sickle cell disease, and she comes at 36 weeks with acute pain abdomen. So when you have 36 weeks, you think about whether she's having labor, but uterus is relaxed and there are no cervical changes. So what could be the diagnosis?
So
Sickle cell anemia, you know the condition. The red cells are sickle shaped like this. They can be sticky, they can adhere, and they can cause a crisis, sickle cell crisis.
So we need a rapid clinical assessment in this case to rule out sickle cell crisis. Of course, other things have to be also simultaneously ruled out, which can present with acute pain like abruption, not like in
uterus is relaxed.
But other things should also cross your mind. Pyelonephritis, cholecystitis should also be ruled out simultaneously. But rapid assessment has to be done to rule out a basically sickle cell crisis. In this, a joint assessment has to be done. A hematologist should be involved in her care. It has to be a multidisciplinary management for her.
Yes.
And she has to be rapidly, she has to be given prescribed analgesia as soon as she presents within, in fact, RCOG recommends within half an hour of presentation, she should be given an analgesic. And simultaneously, we also assess her for her vitals, her pallor, her saturation, her hydration status. We look for any precipitating factors which may have precipitated the acute crisis in her, and also we see how severe it is. If it is mild, we can manage her on just rest, oral fluids, oral analgesics like paracetamol. But if it is moderate to severe, or if it is not relieved with oral medications, then we need to admit her. She needs hospitalization, IV fluids, and stronger analgesics like morphine may be required. And
yeah. So it's
we need to rule out infection simultaneously. So we do tests like CBC, urine routine, urine culture, blood culture if required, if we are suspecting any strong infection. Yeah. And she needs to be she would already be on Ecosprin. She should also be, if she's admitted, she needs thromboprophylaxis. And then we keep assessing her on a regular interval every 20 minutes till she is comfortable.
Yeah. And, you know, in pregnancy, especially blood transfusion, because, you know, you want to replace the blood and they're usually anemic. So it can really prevent a crisis, especially you talked about dehydration. So one of the important things is like, you know, exercise and dehydration, they tend to have the crisis. Thank you very much. Now, this is another very interesting case, autosomal recessive condition, which I would like Dr. Ghosh to answer. This is a non-pregnant. She's non-pregnant and she's 28 years old. She had a previous child with congenital adrenal hyperplasia, and she's coming to you for pre-pregnancy counseling. You know, congenital adrenal hyperplasia is a condition, as you can see, ambiguous genitalia. This is a 12-year-old girl, and she's got stunted growth, she's got hair, she's got no breast, she's got male type of eye distribution and masculine features. We don't want to have a child like this. So how would you counsel? What would you counsel?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for being back with us, Shilpa. Yeah.
Thanks, ma'am. I was actually with the DNB assessor all this time,
Yes.
so sorry for joining late. Ma'am, this patient, the chromosome 6 is responsible. It is an autosomal recessive disease. So if she has a baby at birth who has virilizing features, means the classic form of CH was present in this baby. So mother and father should both be tested. So it should be a multidisciplinary approach. We have to definitely refer to a fetal medicine specialist, a genetic counselor, hormonal profile many times matches with the genotype, but still, because she is desirous of future pregnancies, most probably, then and she's young, so we need to send her to a genetic counselor, first of all. Then she has to understand, as soon as she misses a period, she's supposed to inform the doctor, and the gynecologist is supposed to refer her to the fetal medicine specialist again, because the CVS for it will be done around 11-12 weeks, but the virilization, the labioscrotal folds, the genital, all the development will start at 6 weeks itself. So we need to act much before that. The traditional way of dealing with it has been a glucocorticoid, which crosses the placenta, which is dexamethasone in most of the cases. So it's like 20 microgram per kg per pre-pregnancy weight, which it was given. And it is given till the CVS. Once the CVS proves that either it is a male child, because in males you don't need to treat it antenatally, or if it's a female who's not affected, then the treatment can be stopped then and there. Otherwise, it used to be continued throughout pregnancy.
Right.
Now, a recent 2018 Endocrine Society has given us a word of caution that these patients should be treated at centers where a huge number of such patients are treated, because the dose may still need optimization. This dose, they say, is 60 times more than what an
so they should
indigenous,
be referred to a center with facility. So when she was pregnant, she had a CVS which showed a female affected fetus. So as an obstetrician, and we have the obstetricians in the audience, when should the obstetrician start the woman on steroids? She's come to you at 6 weeks?
Pregnancy is diagnosed 4 to 6 weeks, and then refer her.
Right. So steroids should be started in the dose and referred, and then onwards we can do it. And if it is a female affected child, steroid has to continue.
Yes, ma'am.
So we have already talked about it, dexamethasone, because after 9 weeks, the genital organization occurs. So it will be too late if you start much later. And certainly we do prenatal diagnosis.
Yes, ma'am.
You know, if a woman is on steroids, there are a lot of complications. So what could be some of the complications expected?
Ma'am, if she's herself a CH classic case, then she would already
she's
be
not a
on
classic
hydrocortisone.
case. Like she is on steroids because the baby is female affected, she's on dexamethasone.
So for the baby, if she's herself a classic CH, then and she's pregnant, then she would be on hydrocortisone as well. So the dose may need to be continued, and during labor and delivery, it may need to be increased at the time of labor. But if she is not requiring steroids pre-pregnancy, she'll not require it during pregnancy, except for the fetus. So if she has dexamethasone for the fetus sake, then many patients have complained of striae, edema, gastric distress, and mild hypertension and deranged sugars. So they are moderate risks, but they are not very risky to the mother. I mean, overall, they are not major risks. 1 in 8 fetuses we are still preventing. And anyway, if the fetus is not a male, if she is not a female and the baby is not affected, we are stopping it at 11-12 weeks. So in that 1 in 8, we do continue it throughout pregnancy. As far as the baby is concerned, ma'am, there are 4 things which we need to see. One is the teratogenicity, the second is the birth weight, the third is the brain and behavior of this baby, and the long-term effects. So most of the orofacial defects, only very few cases have been noted, though in rodents, they've noted a few renal agenesis, deranged GTT, and birth weight might be slightly less, but 400 gram or so less. The brain and behavior is overall, many studies have come up. Overall, it's fine, but maybe some changes in short-term memory and MRIs. And so overall, it's a safe drug, but it should be given in a center. Some studies have said you consider it a place where many such patients are treated.
Yeah,
because
but we obstetricians, we do see a lot of other conditions where, the mother is on steroids, even asthma,
cataracts,
any other conditions. So we just have to be aware of the common things like hypertension and diabetes. Thank you, Dr. Shilpa.
Thank you.
Then we come to another autosomal condition, which is very common in Delhi, and that is cystic fibrosis. Now, this is a person, a newly married woman, and she comes, Dr. Yogita, she comes to the pre-pregnancy clinic because her close friend, I had a patient like this, just held a child with cystic fibrosis, and the child was very much in respiratory distress. So she did not want a child like this. So she's saying, please test me for cystic fibrosis. She's healthy. So will you do it?
Ma'am, as we know, cystic fibrosis is another autosomal recessive condition, and it also follows a Mendelian pattern of inheritance. So in case the patient is not having any symptoms of cystic fibrosis like recurrent lung infections or thin belt, then she may be a carrier. So she can get herself tested for the carrier state. She can rule that out for herself. But we have to see the ethnicity also. In India, we are not having cystic fibrosis very commonly. It's mainly in the West, in US and in UK. There, generally, prenatal testing for cystic fibrosis is universally accepted. They do it as a prenatal screening test. But in India, the cystic fibrosis, as it is not very common, we do not require to get it as a rule. But yes, if she is very anxious, she can get herself tested for the carrier state.
That's what I wanted to say, that sometimes patients demand. And if you don't do it and she turns out to be a carrier, then, it's not very nice. So basically, as you said, cystic fibrosis is a condition which, gets as thick as mucus, and it becomes quite difficult to differentiate between tuberculosis, but yes, you can. And basically, if a child is born, her friend, you need to do the mutation analysis for both the partners for the CF gene. So now her friend wants to again get pregnant. So again, then what she should do?
Ma'am, as we are seeing,
previous child with cystic fibrosis.
First child, it was affected. The baby was affected with cystic fibrosis. So we have to see the carrier state of both the parents, because if in case both the parents are carrier for cystic
they will
fibrosis,
be carriers. Otherwise, how did they get a baby?
Ma'am, either one, with the patient heterozygous in case. We need to just do the carrier state for the parents, and then we need to the next baby, whenever she is conceived and she has conceived, we need to do the CVS at 12 weeks to diagnose the status of the that present baby which is in the womb.
Yeah. So, because she has come to you pre-pregnancy, it is always good to do the mutation analysis beforehand. Because you see, all these conditions, thalassemia, cystic fibrosis, they are not like other conditions like typhoid or something. There are, like for thalassemia, there are 95 mutations. There are more than 200 actually. And so when you actually go to do the genetic testing, you need to. So you need to send them to the genetic counselor. Not wait ki tum jab 12 weeks ho gaye CVS karenge. It should not be like that. You need to send them to the geneticist immediately, so that we need to know what is the mutation. So that when she becomes pregnant, sometimes, in AIIMS also, not 100% of the cases of thalassemia we are able to do. There are some mutations which could not be identified. In those cases, we had to arrange for the lab abroad. There are rare disease laboratories. So you need to do all these arrangements before you tell her go and conceive. Because after that, it might be suddenly too late. In fact, with thalassemia, you don't identify the mutation. You might even have to do cord blood sampling and globin chain synthesis and other techniques rather than CVS, okay? So I want to really emphasize that you need to do the mutation analysis when she's non-pregnant now, so that when she becomes pregnant, she can be having a CVS or whatever test is required. So you need to counsel. So I think we had a lot of cases discussed. And so prevention is the important way that you can diagnose. So we need to do the carrier screening for all this. Now we also have newborn screening. So we talked about just the other day, there was a very interesting discussion on newborn screening. So all these things will prevent the birth of a baby with a very severe condition, which is quite a burden, not only to the family, but to the society and to the nation. So I thank all my panelists for their excellent discussions. And I can see a lot of questions in the chat box. there were 4, now it's become 1. But we open the forum to the audience for any queries that they may have or any discussions or participation that they would like to do. Can somebody look at the chat box? Are the question answers?
There is one question. What is the significance of a raised HB Punjab?
Okay. So who was the one on thalassemia, expert on thalassemia of the panelists? Could you please answer, Dr. Amita? Yeah, thalassemia.
Yes, I think hemoglobin Punjab is not of much significance, and yeah, and
Basically, you see, it all depends upon this condition. Can you hear me? Anybody would like to answer?
Husband's HPLC would be required as well.
Yes, of course. Husbands.
I would like to add here, ma'am.
Yeah, because you see, yeah, who's that?
Yeah, this is Dr. Seema Thakur.
Yeah, Seema, please, most welcome. Bataiye.
Yeah, so here, ma'am, actually hemoglobin D Punjab is quite common.
Yeah.
So we need to do the, the carrier testing of the husband. And also suppose, it may happen that he is also a carrier. Then in that situation, we need to do the beta globin gene sequencing of both the partners. So this is important. If otherwise, D trait and beta thal is not a condition where the CVS would be required.
Basically, yeah, I have hemoglobin E disease, though my hemoglobin is around 30. But then I used to say, like, my son has hemoglobin E. So he married a Punjabi girl. So if she had thalassemia minor, then we would have had to do a CVS.
Yes,
but
yes.
She's normal and he has disease.
Yeah.
So it's not necessary. So
it's
similarly,
not
D Punjab.
always CVS.
Yeah, it's not the ones conditions which are, Dr. Arora gave a very long list of the types of thalassemia which are not very severe. So in such cases, there is severity. If it is not too severe, there is no need for doing prenatal diagnosis.
Yeah, so you highlighted about the E because we have lots of people from Assam, residing
northeast
in part
Bengal,
of Delhi, northeast part of the India. So they are carrier of hemoglobin E, both the couple. Recently,
Disease
Dr. Shilpa
also.
has referred one case where both the couple is E trait. So in this situation, prenatal diagnosis is not indicated. But what is important that we need to find out the silent carrier, which Dr. Arora has highlighted that needs to be found out. So most of the cases—
silent thalassemia carrier.
Yeah, whether there is silent thalassemia carrier as well. So for that will be conclusively given by the beta globin gene sequencing only. So I always order the beta globin gene sequencing for both the E trait, even if they are not going to have the baby with the E major, which is transfusion dependent, but they may be hidden thalassemia trait. So beta globin gene.
Like Dr. Seema, I have E disease. E disease does not, they don't have anemia,
Yes,
but
yes.
they do have hyperbilirubinemia in traces of hemolysis.
Yeah, they may have. Mild anemia
But
they can have.
Yes, mild anemia, or they can also have jaundice.
So not thal major, not thal major.
No, I'm not talking about thal. I'm talking about hemoglobin E disease.
Yeah. Clinical presentation.
Punjab, we really don't have.
Yeah,
Any
so
other questions are there?
We have one more
Okay,
question.
there is a question. What is the importance of hemoglobin D Iran?
Yeah.
Anybody would like to answer?
So
hemoglobin D Iran is not a very dangerous disease. Really, we don't have to do. Latika Chawla, mutation testing for proband if the baby is alive. Oh, hello, Latika. She's one of my first fellows of fetal medicine. Yes. So sometimes the baby it's important to do that because for future pregnancies, it is easier to do the genetic assessment. Somebody said, Punan Law, previous to anencephaly, what prenatal counseling to be done? Well, anencephaly is not an autosomal recessive disorder, but since you're asking, anybody would like to answer? Monica, folic acid?
Of course.
Unmute, please. Monica?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, so anencefali, we need to basically give preconception folic acid, and sometimes there can be MHFTR gene mutations which can be leading to recurrent neural tube defects.
You can also do the blood sugars, you know, the simple thing. She could be diabetic for all you know.
Yes.
Okay, what other questions? I think there are no more questions there. Somebody's raised a hand, Manipal Hospital. Somebody's raised a hand.
No. No.
So anybody wants to ask any more questions? There are hardly any questions. Okay, anybody wants to add anything more? In that case, I think I would like to ask Dr. Seema.
There is one question, ma'am, there's one question that has just come in. If there is an, yeah, so can we have that question again? I think it's been removed or what?
The Punjab.
No.
Punjab, we answered that.
No, we have had one question which was raised. Question raised by Dr. Gitanjali. If there is an associated spine and rib abnormality, can be Charcot-Levin autosomal recessive. So
Charcot-Levin syndrome.
Yeah.
I can't see the question. Where
I
is
think.
it? Okay, if there is associated spine and rib abnormality, can be
in case of
Charcot-Levin.
recurrent, yeah. In case of recurrent.
Yeah, Charcot-Levin syndrome is an autosomal recessive condition wherein the ribs, are affected. There are lesser ribs and the body, the thorax is smaller than the abdomen, and ultimately the child dies of respiratory distress. I have diagnosed a lot of conditions with this syndrome. Yes, it is autosomal recessive. Earlier on, we used to wait for the ultrasounds and diagnose by ultrasound. But now we can do Corinne-Willis sampling after the mutations have been diagnosed, identified. And so we can do Charcot-Levin syndrome diagnosis as early as 11 weeks. We don't have to wait till 18 weeks for the diagnosis by ultrasound. Is that okay? Whoever asked the question.
Yes.
Dr. Gitanjali, are you
Dr.
there?
Gitanjali.
Do you want to ask anything else?
I think we are done.
So Dr. Leena, you can carry
yes. So there are 3 participants who have raised their hand.
Okay.
Can we get on to them? Who have
Yeah,
raised
please.
their hand? We would like.
Yeah, we
them
have
to-
time. So let us
Yes.
get on to them.
Yes, we really have kept to time. That is wonderful, I think, with all our speakers.
I'm sorry, I had to cut it because I wanted it to be crisp and I wanted half an hour for discussion, questions to be raised by the audience.
So we are just getting to those who have raised their hand because we give them the.
Till then, ma'am, many juniors ask in alpha thalassemia, how is the HPLC? So we can tell them about how is the HPLC in alpha thalassemia. It may be normal.
Yeah, alpha thalassemia is a condition where it is not very common in India. It is more common in the Southeast Asian countries. And
yes.
the diagnosis comes when there is anemia, fetal anemia. They usually come as non-human high drops. And then when we do the cord blood sampling, you have to keep that in mind. Then you do the globin chain synthesis.
Yes, ma'am.
So I don't think we have them.
In Seema's place, I can see a hand. I can see a hand raised in Seema's box.
Dr. Poonam Lal has also asked that
question is over.
Minor,
Yes.
Okay, there is a question. Ma'am, I'm thalassemia minor. My husband and son are normal. So what precautions for the next generation?
Okay,
That's
you,
a good question.
Doctor, anybody would like to answer? Any of the panelists?
She has to do her son's carrier status. If he's a carrier, then his partner will also has to be tested, and then it carrier is.
Yes.
And her own
Absolutely
siblings,
correct.
ma'am. Dr. Poonam's sisters and brothers should be checked, so their children would then be checked.
Yes,
So, but
absolutely.
otherwise,
So,
yeah.
you know, it goes horizontal screening also, vertical screening as well as horizontal. So both things have to be done. The son, she's saying, is normal. Normal means minor, or
She has now mentioned
yeah,
that the
Dr.
sister,
Poonam,
the sister is minor
your
and
son
the brother is normal.
your son is minor or absolutely normal?
She has mentioned that the son is absolutely normal.
Son is not a carrier. So for you, you're very lucky. It stops there. So, but then please remember to, if you want to know so much micro details, and your son's wife can have a, so that, you know, if she's a carrier, the child may be a carrier, and the next person that child marries should have it. Anyway, sister is minor. What about the husband? Sister's husband, Dr. Poonam?
I don't think they're married yet.
Okay. So, well, you know, we at one time we used to say that all college-going students should have thalassemia screening.
Okay. So she's mentioned.
But we found that it was very.
She says the sister's husband is normal.
So, anybody would like to answer this? Risk to the next generation.
So there is a risk of only carrier state in the next generation.
So if it is carrier state, they just have to make sure that the partner should not also be a carrier.
There's another question.
Now the questions are coming in. Can thalassemia be the indication for termination of pregnancy?
Major,
On parents'
yes.
wish. Thalassemia what? Major? Major?
Minor, she has mentioned.
Non-minor.
Minor is not ethically an indication. But, you know, related to this, I have had cases of hemophilia. Hemophilia, you know, even if they're carriers, they like to terminate. But we'll talk about them a little another day. But today here, I don't think it is ethical. Do you all agree?
Yes.
It is
Yes,
unethical.
Until unless they want to terminate because of they don't want pregnancy, then it is not because of thalassemia. It is because they don't want to continue the pregnancy, but it will be already be 12 weeks more and or more by the time it is diagnosed.
So in fact, I just to add a little bit of interest, I have a patient who was undiagnosed in the entire duration of her pregnancy, and she had a thalassemia major baby who was born, and then they underwent a bone marrow transplant, and now that child is fine. She is now having her second pregnancy, who was a thalassemia minor that has been confirmed that way. So she's so grateful about that. So she's going ahead with it because she definitely wants to have a second child.
So in fact, when somebody goes for a CVS, it's a happy situation, not a sad situation at all.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, that is one of the commonest indications for CVS actually.
Ma'am, may I ask one question?
Dr. Gupta, we missed that question there.
Dr. Dekar, just one thing. What about cord sampling for the if the sibling, if the one of the babies has thalassemia major, then should we advise stem cell banking for the sibling?
Yes, we get a lot of cases. You know what we do is when we are doing the CVS, the parents conceive only to have a blood donor, you know, stem cell donor. So we do the HLA typing along with the CVS because the HLA type has to match. And I know it may sound very unethical that you're conceiving only to save the life of the previous child, but this is something which is in demand. And we do CVS for the diagnosis of thalassemia, to rule out thalassemia, as well as for HLA typing to see whether this baby can be a suitable donor for the previous child. And then we collect the cord blood.
Yes.
I too had a patient, ma'am, who went for her second baby just to, you know, have that as a donor for her first kid who was thalassemia.
So you know, if you do the HLA typing along with it, rather than do the HLA typing after birth and find that they don't match, it's better. You can even do it during the CVS. I can see 3 more questions. Yeah. Slowly. Are there increased risk of thrombophilia in thalassemia minor? Anybody wants to answer?
Platelets would be normal usually, ma'am.
No risk of thrombophilia.
Slightly.
That's a totally
No
different
risk.
thing. Earliest at which gestation thalassemia can be diagnosed in the fetus? Okay, where is she gone? Shilpa ji, where are
Yes,
you?
ma'am.
We were
Ma'am, yeah.
discussing yesterday about NIPT.
Yes, ma'am. NIPT.
No,
would
the
not be
question
okay
is
for
actually earliest gestation thalassemia ki diagnosis in the fetus.
thalassemia would be by CVS, ma'am.
Yeah.
So it
So
has
that
to
is
be.
CVS. You know, we don't do CVS before 10 weeks. So 11 weeks, I would say, is the earliest time. But now, if we talk about a little more research, is that you can also do NIPT. You can also do it for fetal cells in the maternal blood. But this is still in the research stage, wherein you don't have to do CVS. And if you find a good fraction, I actually read up yesterday, and there are lots of studies on how thalassemia can be diagnosed by the fetal cells in the maternal blood. That could be at 10 weeks itself.
So in coming years, it would change a lot of things again.
Yes, yes.
Things should be much better. There's a very interesting question. Do thalassemia carriers, are they at more risk of malignancies?
I don't think so.
No, ma'am.
Okay. And Dr. Jyoti has asked a question on the role of cord blood banking in a thalassemia.
Yeah, so it does have a role. If a previous child is affected and you need the cord blood for the cord blood transplant, but even this, you know, is still in the very early stages in India, though there are lots of reports worldwide. It first started with Fanconi's anemia, but they are also doing it for thalassemia. So it can be done.
Yes, ma'am. Even along with bone marrow, sometimes it is used along with bone marrow as well. So it's a good
but you do
idea.
either bone marrow or you do cord blood. Nah?
Yes, ma'am.
Stem cell. You do either bone marrow or you do cord blood.
Some studies have come up with both also, but it's still in the early stages of studies.
The advantages of cord blood is that there are less reactions, you see, graft rejections.
I think we are
aware
all
about
the
things.
questions.
Can I ask one question?
Yeah, sure. We're waiting.
So I was just thinking, like, we've been talking of the cord blood. Suppose we've done a CVS when we find it to be a minor baby, and the first baby was a thalassemia major. Would the cord blood of this thalassemic minor help out the stem cells and that for the other major baby? Or is thalassemia minor by itself that?
It does. It does.
So we can go ahead with the cord blood banking for that.
Yeah. But nothing like better, you know, normal.
Okay.
So they could probably go into the public stem cell bank also, in case that is not enough.
Yeah. So the present many banks are offering
now,
public banking.
They have started roping in the public banking.
In fact, I think in future, like we have blood banks, we will have stem cell banks more and more, and genetic engineering will come into picture. So things will change in another 10 years.
Yeah, so I think the NIPT, the earlier, if you would get in the NIPT, will really be a game changer, you know, for us all obstetricians to send our patients for testing.
Even for CH, research is being done that do an NIPT, and in countries where it is allowed to tell the sex of the baby, if it's a Y chromosome and you have enough cell fraction to diagnose at 7 weeks, if there is, then you should not treat those babies. So they would be, you know, they would not be taking the steroids unnecessarily. But all this is upcoming research, and more would be coming in the country.
Can I just interrupt? There is another question. That is precautions to be taken by a patient to avoid sickle cell crisis.
Dr. Anita has asked a question.
Yeah. So I think Monica was reading up sickle cell crisis. So precautions. Monica's there?
Dr. Monica is not there. I think she's
plenty of fluids, ma'am.
Would anybody like to answer? Hydration, plenty of fluids, avoid strenuous exercises, avoid
Yes.
infections,
Yes.
and whenever there is a crisis, you see, avoid anemia and be in touch with the medical specialist as well as the obstetrician.
Yes, ma'am.
And we always, because these sickle cell women are at risk of having PIH, they should be put on aspirin prophylaxis. Yeah, and they should be managed by a very expert team during a crisis.
Yeah.
High altitude journeys. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would like to make one comment, ma'am. So Dr.
Yeah.
Shilpa, you were saying
Sure,
about
I think we
PIH.
can go to the end of the session, wherein we can invite
ma'am-
Dr. Seema Thakur to give her concluding
Yeah.
remarks
Ma'am,
and
one
offer the vote of
just-
thanks.
Yeah, ma'am, just one question. What Dr. Anita just asked about a high altitude journey. Supposing the same patient wants to go to Ladakh, so what should she do? What should we advise her?
Better to avoid.
Not to go to
Sickle cell
Ladakh.
crisis can be terrible.
Yes.
I have seen patients dying of
Pain.
sickle cell crisis,
Yes.
and the pain is just too severe.
Too severe.
You know, they should avoid anything which is going to cause problems.
Hypoxia.
Anything which is going to cause problems, they should avoid.
Yeah, so I would
So-
just like to make one comment in CAH prenatal diagnosis. We all discussed that, you know, the steroid should be given if the female affected fetus. But by and large, in a practical scenario in India, nobody wants a, you know, affected female to
We
be
never
born.
tell them, you know,
So-
we never tell
no.
them it's a female.
So most of the time, if the baby is affected by the genetic testing, it's the termination which the couple would opt. So it's like that only. So that's what, you know, we practice as a, you know, so we generally, because most of the cases, the child, they have an affected child, so they don't want any child to be pricked every day and taking the medicines. So it's usually that only, that the
But
prenatal
Dr.
diagnosis
Seema,
and termination. So no
we
prenatal-
mustn't take the
Yeah.
decision for the patient. Patients have to take. I have had cases where major congenital malformations, I actually did a thalassemia testing. The baby turned out to be thalassemia. God knows, you know, why they decided to carry on with the pregnancy.
Yeah, so this is one another angle which I wanted to add, because, you know, most of the time we tell them, okay, take the steroids and all, and we are after them, they have not taken. So this is another angle, because most of the people in India, because we don't have much support for these affected children. So our society is different. So probably
Yeah.
this is one another angle, you know, which I
Yeah,
wanted
absolutely.
to emphasize.
And in our country, termination of pregnancy is very
Is allowed.
easy. Very easy. It's now going to be 24 weeks. So, but I think it's okay, because, you know, the burden of these conditions are really too much. I have interacted with these thalassemia people, all these other conditions. It's a very, very sad situation. Pathetic.
So,
So, Dr.
I
Seema,
think
could you
we-
please sum up?
Yeah,
Sum
so we
up,
are
give your
over.
take-home
I-
Messages.
Yes. So
So
I would now
outset-
invite Dr. Seema Thakur to give a summary of this very interesting topic and to propose a vote of thanks. Dr. Seema Thakur is a senior consultant genetic and fetal diagnosis at the Fortis Hospital, Delhi, and the Rainbow Children Hospital, Delhi. And she also has a genetic clinic in Dwarka. I call upon her to give us the salient points of this today's ECME and to propose a vote of thanks.
So thank you, Dr. Leena, for such a kind introduction. So at the beginning, it's my pleasure to thank Dr. Sharda Jain, who has agreed to be a chief guest for today's session. And she has been mentor for all the DGF forums. And I would like to thank her for the launch of our DGF Dwarka this month. And I admit that I'm overwhelmed by the responsibility given to me as a vice president for this forum. And ma'am, I seek your blessings today to fulfill my dreams of pursuing this academics through this opportunity. So thank you, ma'am. Now I would like to, Dr. J.S. Arora, sir, he is an authority in the field of thalassemia, and his talk on the burden of thalassemia today was an eye-opener. And as we know that 10,000 thalassemics are born every year, and India is known as a thalassemia capital. It's very sad to know that. So as per him, and I think most of the obstetricians are doing, but it's high time to start this as a universal screening that should be supplemented. And the another thing which I highlighted, the iron supplementation, which I do agree that most of the time these thalassemia carrier women are denied the iron because it is a myth that they will have the iron overload because of this. So these are carriers, these are not major. So there is a difference between the minor and the major. And then Dr. Deepika Deka's ma'am's talk on the panel discussion on the thalassemia and autosomal recessive disorders, congenital adrenal hyperplasia, sickle cell anemia. This has definitely raised the awareness of these disorders to the obstetricians in this area. And I would like to add that the most important thing to prevent these disorders is the family history, and every obstetrician should start taking the family history at the very first disease. And the second thing which they would have, the universal screening for thalassemia. So after this CME, everybody should start these two additions. You are all doing so well, you are writing so many tests. So this is just one addition. And basic principle of the patient care in the maternal and fetal medicine is the prediction, prevention, and the management. And with the advances in the genetic techniques, it is possible to predict these disorders and hence prevent them. Because as you know that the treatment of these disorders, they are most of the time, they are not available. And if they are available, they are at such a high cost. Like most of you have heard about the crowdfunding about the SMA, and the cost is 18 crores. Can we imagine? And the prevention cost is 7,000 to 8,000 rupees. So now that when the treatment is available, the responsibility is more, because if the treatment is available and it is unaffordable, beyond the reach of anyone, so it's high time that we should start doing the predictive testing for all these pregnant women. And now the genetic testing has advanced to such an extent that even in the asymptomatic carrier status, there is a recommendation that they should be done the carrier testing for the minimum 100 genetic disorders. There are lots of data available in the Indian literature. A recent study was done, and that shows that in addition to the thalassemia, there is SMA, the deafness, the cystic fibrosis, Pompe disease. The carrier status is 2 to 3% for them. So the genetic testing is available. So with these few words, I say that the prevention is the key to the management of these autosomal recessive disorders. And at the end, I would like to thank our secretary, Dr. Leena Sridhar, for her tireless efforts in organizing this webinar. And I also thank my panelists, chairpersons, for giving their valuable time and sharing their inputs. And on behalf of DGF Dwarka, I thank all delegates for joining the webinar today and making this as a interactive. Thank you
So much, Dr. Seema. And like a grand finale, I would request you all to smile, and we would like to take a small pic just to mark the occasion. And here's to more and more interesting, ECMEs, and hopefully we would probably have a, actually get together in a physical CME in days to come. Let's hope that happens in the near future. But till that time, it's going to be ECMEs, and we will just take just one moment. We're trying to get in the capture. Huh? Yes. So once more, can we have one more? Since we were talking.
Yeah, I think we have to be still.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Jyoti Bhaskar.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. That was excellent.
Bye-bye.
Too good.
Bye.
And we had quite a large number of delegates. I could see at one time there were like 74.
84, ma'am.
84, yeah. I
Yeah.
think.
88 also.
And we
88 also. It crossed 88 also.
Oh, great, great, great.
Great
I'm sure
discussion.
the next time we're going to make it more than a century.
Yeah, we'll cross the century. Yes.
I
Thank you,
think
Dr.
such a
Jyoti,
slew
for
of
your kind
webinars,
best
so
wishes.
it becomes like, to
Actually,
pick
it's
and
become
choose
too
and-
much.
Yeah,
Like, I think
but-
today, Dr. Shada Jain had said that we should not have it on Wednesdays. And
Oh,
Mondays.
we are
also.
having on Thursdays, ma'am. We are
Wednesdays, they have the
No, I
critical
mean, there
care
are really
posting.
too many webinars.
We are
Like today
comfortably
itself,
on
there
a
was another
Thursday.
one. AOGD
So
had
we've
one.
kept it once in a month, ma'am. DGF Dwarka has
We
just
are
kept
good,
it
but there are
once
so
a
many.
month.
Like AOGD had one from 2 to 4 today, no? So
Yeah.
that's why they could not join AOGD.
Oh.
Dr. Achla has joined for a short while.
Yeah.
She was listening. In fact, we said a hello to her in the chat box. So she had joined for some time. In fact, she was actively listening to the panel discussion. So
Okay.
I guess after some time she had to leave. So thank you very
Okay.
much.
Great
then.
going,
Thank you, everybody.
great depth.
Have a good
Yeah.
Nice meeting everybody.
Thanks,
Bye,
everybody.
ma'am.
Bye-bye. Great learning. Thank you. Thank you all.